Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we're looking at a Friday night slate to close out the work week here, Nate, with 10 games to choose from. In this one, we're talking about the Sacramento Kings still getting a little bit of disrespect in Detroit. Not a big enough spread. We'll talk about that here in just a minute. Also have another game video and our player props up for you guys, so make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Continue to follow along with us each and every weekday this regular season. Also head to thelines.com. That's where you can get that great written content that we've got for you guys, and use our odds finder tool to go ahead and shop those NBA lines across the U.S. sportsbooks. Get the best juice back on all your bets. Nate, let's go ahead and get into this 10-game slate and then talk Kangs and Pistons.
Yep. Yeah, I actually really like this slate. I think there's a lot great to choose from, and this is a good one that you picked out here. We got Hawks -1 at the Hornets. LaMelo Ball's back. That totals up at 232. We got the Kings -5 at Detroit. Josh mentioned a little disrespect, an extremely high total here, though, at 239. Warriors are +8 at the Sixers. They will be without Steph Curry for some time here. Pacers +8 at the Cavs. Magic +13 in Boston. Not often you're on a 4-game win streak and you're that big of dogs. There's an outside chance Rob Williams debuts for the Celtics. The other game we break down here is a pick'em, Brooklyn at Toronto. Totals at 226. The Knicks, looking to beat the Bulls again, are +3 in Chicago. The Wolves +1 at the Thunder. Blazers +3.5 at Dallas. And then the Nuggets -1 at the Lake Show. Interesting game there as well. But we are talking the Detroit Pistons, who it just seems like nobody takes seriously. And that I feel like I can chalk up half of their wins to just people being like, oh, Detroit's on the schedule. Let's rest someone, or just not play big minutes, or just, do whatever the hell we want. Because this is barely an NBA team with Cade Cunningham shut down for the season. I mean, there's some bright spots in terms of, what you see from Jaden Ivey, for sure. Bojan, like we talk about, trying to play his way off of this team. But they are terrible, especially on defense. Last 3, 118 defensive rating. Somehow been scoring 120 a game with a good pace. But you look at the recent meeting in Sacramento, and the Kings win by 8, despite getting outgunned at a 51% rate from the three-point line. And the Pistons are not a team that's going to hit 51% of their threes in a consistent fashion at all. No, they are, I believe, 27th in three-point shooting, 27th in assist-to-turnover ratio, and 24th in efficiency. And the Kings are 5th, 7th, and in those efficiency categories. The Kings are just dealing with a really tough schedule right now. I mean, the only reason they're getting this kind of disrespect is like, well, look at the results. They've had to grind them out. They're still on this road trip. It seemed like they just finished an East Coast road trip like a week ago, and now they're back on the East Coast for 6 more games. Got to be a nice second half for them at some point, but I think we've forgotten how efficient they are. For a while, the number 2 offensive team behind the Celtics before they had to leave Sacramento and play this tough schedule. And De'Aaron Fox wasn't right. And he tried to come back on the front end of the back-to-back against Philly. For whatever reason, it didn't go. But it did click in their last game. And they won a shootout with Toronto. Sabonis, Fox, both looking great. But, I mean, between those guys and Harrison Barnes, they combined to basically shoot 30 free throws on the Pistons the last time out. So, I mean, neither of these teams can protect the rim. I know you're saying you're scared to take an under, even though it's at 240. I wouldn't be that scared based on how high that is. I mean, Sacramento, much less likely to get into that kind of astronomical shootout on the road. But I think they are very likely to win this game. So maybe if you are scared at 238, 239, you tease it up and get rid of that spread, get Sac -1.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not scared of the spread. I think it's disrespectful. I think one team is, very rightly so, a bottom 5 team in the NBA. And I think one team is, potentially a top 10 team in the NBA right now, in the Kangs. I think there's a lot of motivation for them. D Fox coming back in that Raptors game and them winning was huge. I know that everybody in that's lighting the beam for the Kings wanted them to go 3-3 on this road trip. They're 2-3 right now, playing some really tough comp: Bucks, Cavs, Knicks, Sixers, Raptors, all in a row, winning just two of those five there. Which I think they would be okay with. I think they would have rather have beaten the Knicks, and they got pounced by them, but the Knicks look really good, longest winning streak in the NBA right now. They've got a point guard. That's for a different video. But 5 in a row against some tough Eastern Conference teams, and they're finishing it off with the Pistons. Like, you've got to pull it out. You've got to win this game, and D Fox being back, he's going to play in that game. I think Kevin Huerter might come back in that one as well, which really is huge for them in the 3-point category. And if he's back, it does once again scare me even to take an under in 240. I was trying to pick an under in that Pacers Kings game, and it started out with a first quarter that they scored I think 52 points, and I was like, yeehaw. And then the rest of the game, I think the total ended with like a 270 something total. So it could just go off at any moment. The thing that I'm not even really worried about that right now. I'm more worried just talking about how the Kings are disrespected, right? 9-1 straight up when they're listed as a favorite this season, and then 7-3 against the spread, because that spread's never big enough, because they're still not seen as a league contender right now, which is disrespectful. They're winning those games where they are favored by 12.5 points on average, and covering the spread by 8 points a game on average in these games as well. And I think this is ripe for another double-digit victory for them. They do go under on the road. 5-10 to the under on the road, where the games average 227, and that's because they're just not the same offense on the road as they are at home, where they score 123 versus the 113 on the road. Similar defense, and really it's the strength of schedule for them. Even if you look at some of the numbers that I'm throwing at you, their strength of schedule is the fifth hardest in the league. The only legitimate team ahead of them is the Mavericks. Everybody else sucks, because obviously if you have a shitty schedule or a shitty record, you're going to be playing higher strength of schedule teams because you're one of those bad teams. But at any rate, they're a legitimate team that's playing on the road, especially Toronto, Cleveland. I just named you all those teams. They've also played Boston, Memphis, the Warriors, and the Heat, all on the road, and the Clippers. So they're playing the best comp in the league right now on the road, and they're still 9-6 against the spread, 7-8 straight up against all those teams that I just mentioned there, and a few more as well, some that they played twice. So I think that as soon as I saw that spread, I was like, that's not high enough. And the reason it's not high enough is because it's still the Sacramento Kings. What they did in Toronto was very impressive, and the way that they're winning games by making threes. Huerter, very important for that, but also fast break points, limiting fast break points, getting some second chance points, in the paint with DeMontis and those offensive rebounds, and just getting it and going. But when they're on the road, they're playing that defense to limit fast break points, to limit opponents' second chance points, get a defensive rebound and go. But really, more importantly, they need to get turnovers as well, scoring a ton of turnovers, points off of those turnovers. That also scares me for the under, because Detroit is a young team that continues to turn the ball over, letting their opponents get points off of turnovers. They're 10th worst at that, essentially, or 8th worst rather, in terms of allowing that to happen. They've been playing awful at home, have the Pistons 1-4 straight up and against the spread in their last 5, not failing to cover by 6 points. 122 defensive rating, definitely worst, allowing 122 points a game, playing at a pretty slow pace as well. They're unable to stop anybody, only scoring 112 points. So 5.5 points, give me that. I'm happy with all that. I'm not necessarily feeling an under. I just want to be bold and take one, because 240 points is an absurd amount. It's just I don't have the balls for that right now, but that would be my preferred bet on the total.
Yeah, it's not that scary. I mean, you have in here that they're 9-3 to the over at home, the Pistons, but those games are averaging just 230. So, I mean, 239 isn't. I think it's being juked a little bit, because what we just saw between the Kings and the Raptors, which is kind of an anomaly, we'll address in that Nets Raptors video as well. But otherwise, the Kings have not been playing those kind of games away from Sleep Train Arena, I think it's called. Yeah, I mean, usually it's like a 109, 103 type game we've seen a bunch on the East Coast road trip. I mean, the Pistons aren't going to be able to stop them. That's what we feel more confident about. That's why we say take the Kings. It's just like the numbers between the lines for the Pistons. It's like they're 1-6 straight up after a win, losing by 8 points per game. That to me says again, people literally shade them out of the calendar instead of circling them. And they're like, oh, we don't have a game that day. And then they're like, oh, the Pistons actually won. And then they come back and they're like, we can do some very basic things to beat this team. And I think Sacramento will be on point in that regard. I think this is the end of their road trip. And they don't really have the luxury after all the gauntlet they faced to just say like, oh, we'll just wax over this one.
100%. Yeah. 3 days off before they have to play the Hornets. Not a team that scares anybody. So I don't, it's not really an overlook it game. It's we need this game. We're 15-12 and we've had to dig ourselves out of a really crappy start. So we don't really have the opportunity and the luxury afforded to us to not bring it against the Pistons on the road. Everything that they do, the Pistons do, everything that they do well on defense, Detroit, is sort of defending what Sacramento wants to do well, not scaring me for Sacramento winning, just saying, if you do want the under there at 240, go ahead and hit it. It might get up to like 242, and you might feel like you could wait a little bit as we're recording this pretty late Thursday night with it still sitting at about 239.5, 240, depending on where you find it.
Yeah, I'm not seeing much early movement on this for the Nets, and it's surprising. I think we kind of forgot what the Nets could be if they, put all the bullshit aside kind of and just started playing basketball. Because if you look at this roster and the talent level, like if these weren't like human beings with distractions and mental issues, we could just, if you were playing a video game, you'd be like, you could crush all the way to a championship. And they still do have like the fourth or fifth shortest odds to win the title because of the talent level on this team. And they've been much better coached since Jacques Vaughn took over. I'm a huge Steve Nash guy, but not as good a coach. I think we can say not as experienced. And the Nets defense has been far from a laughingstock since he took over. They've won 8 of their last 9 overall, with the only loss coming against the Boston Celtics, a well-rested Boston Celtics team at that point. And the offense has really taken off lately. Kyrie, speaking of distractions, is finally, I think, playing the kind of elite Kyrie ball we've come to expect when he is rolling. And he's got 30 points per game, along with good peripheral stats, 125 offensive rating in his last 3. The Nets have are scoring 122 in their last 4, sending 3 of those 4 over. And the over is not a bad play here, but I think the fact that I'm going to harp on how the Raptors defense is more of an issue. Then that's why we like the Nets here. And the thing I circle back to is like, okay, cool. The Nets won 3 straight against the Raptors. Bet Kevin Durant played really well in those. Oh my God. No. 18 points per game, very low usage rate, like the closest you can come to shutting down KD. And sure enough, OG Anunoby was glued to him in all of those games. I mean, speaking of short odds, I think he has the third shortest odds to win Defensive Player of the Year. When you take a guy like that out of the lineup, it's not shocking that, 124 defensive rating in 2 games for the Raptors. And those came against the Kings and the Magic. We're not exactly a juggernaut here. But yeah, I mean, and on the season, they do allow the highest percentage inside the arc. So it is an area where Durant should operate really well. He did have 45 points against the Raptors, 4 games ago. And Kyrie's also killed the Raptors. So the reason they won those 3 games is defense. And then Kyrie, again, doing his thing with about 30 points on a 128 offensive rating. So, yeah, I mean, I didn't even get to have time to really go into the role players for the Nets and how well they're all playing now with Utah Watanabe back in the lineup, and Ben Simmons playing a role. I mean, becoming just a role player. Joe Harris getting healthier. Probably won't have Seth Curry for this one. I don't think it really matters because, I mean, you want size against Toronto. And they limit everything you need to. Number 1 in 2-point percentage allowed on the road. Number 4 paint points overall. 7 in fast break points allowed. That's what you need to stop with Toronto. The thing the Nets struggle with is 3-pointers, and Toronto can't hit threes. Especially now with OG Anunoby out.
OG everywhere, man. You were excited to talk about that one. I'm with you. The only thing I vehemently disagree with is that you said the Orlando Magic were not exactly world beaters, and those are my Orlando Magic that you're talking about, who are the second longest win streak in the NBA at 4 in a row.
And so they're just plus 13 off that.
No, they're plus 13. We're not talking about that one. I don't trust anybody to cover against the Celtics at home. I don't care what the spread is. So no, but in this one, yeah, they're they're the best team in the league in the last 9 games. Let's use everything we're saying here to let's caution ourselves with everything we're saying here. They played the Wizards, the Pacers, fine. The Hawks, awful right now. Hornets, lost to the Seas. Raptors didn't have Pascal. Wizards, Magic, who we didn't call world beaters, beat them by 7, didn't cover, and the Blazers without Dame. So like that is a brutally easy strength of schedule right there, right? And that's fine because the Raptors are in this wheelhouse of teams that we're talking about that they beat in this 9-game surge, if you will, just failing to beat the Celtics. A 9-point game. They were in that game for a lot of it. But what you like to see, from the Nets right now. And I will say, I like what the Nets are doing. I was just asking some people, like, where's Jacques Vaughn lovers should be like talking about how like they said someone like Jacques Vaughn should have been the head coach from the jump. I will say he hasn't dealt with the nonsense either, right? Kyrie's been quiet. He got punished in a way that was probably a little bit harsh. We're not even getting into that. The point is once Kyrie came back, he's been chill. So as long as he's playing ball, like that's the way the Nets have been winning in this 9-game streak is really indicative and emblematic of the way that Kyrie plays basketball. A really high effective field goal percentage, a really good, a lot of assists and really good, points in the paint, as well as being able to obviously shoot from 3. And then the mid-range he's also doing, but Kevin Durant's already been doing that at such a high degree. They were already at the top of the league in mid-range. So, but opponent effective field goal percentage as well in that time frame. And really in general, they brought it all the way up to like 6th best in the league. If you're really, it's a make or miss league, Nate. If you're making buckets and you're not letting anybody else score, you're probably going to be just fine, right? Toronto, they score the ways that they've been scoring. They don't have a center, so it's all fast break, points off turnovers. There is the second chance points because everybody on their team is 6'9" or 10 with like really long arms, so all of them are crashing the offensive boards. And all these things are the ways you want to win, but it's all based on pace. And Brooklyn is happy to slow things down, hit their mid-range shots, and just play a lot better defense. Yeah, you talk about them not needing Seth Curry, and at very least it's because even in the games that he's been back during this streak for them, he's only had the 9 points. He's only had 4 3-point attempts a game, making less than 2. So I don't care that he's shooting it at a 40% clip. He's not even getting shots off. And he's really only been able to manage about 24 minutes per game in that time frame, because he's not getting the shots off and the looks that he's going to really need at this point. Watanabe is the guy at this point, and like you said, he's probably a big reason that they're not as worried about Steph coming back. He's only been back for a few games, but this is him ramping back up. I mean, we saw him score like 20 for a couple games in a row right before he got hurt. That's crucial for them. The Raptors just, I don't know, at some point, like, you're going to need to be able to like defend the paint. You're going to be able to need to rebound a little bit better and keep everybody else out of the paint. Maybe you don't need it in this game, but it's still just not a matchup for them that you're feeling as good about. You've also seen guys like Scotty Barnes a couple of days ago also had a few issues with the way that he's being used. So it just seems like some of it is a little bit of a fairy tale. And if Pascal is not playing at a super high rate, there's not enough guys making threes for them right now to really be able to, I think, overcome what they're going to be getting on offense from the Nets, who are super efficient. They're not necessarily playing super fast. They're just playing super efficiently. And I think they're very happy with like a 108, 102 type of game for the Nets, maybe 112, 104, whatever, in that like 215 to 220 range total, rather than what the Raptors would really like to get this thing ramped up and be able to score a bunch of points in transition. The Nets are going to, if they're going to have their way, I think they're going to be slowing it down and keeping themselves, keeping this game in their sort of style of play.
Yeah, because the Raptors do have more depth, and I mean that's usually based on whoever they're playing. But then the Nets, who are top heavy. But yeah, at some point they have to be able to score in the half court. Is like what we've talked about for weeks with the Raptors. Is like the only way they're winning is by being more efficient than the other team, by grabbing a few extra opportunities and using those possessions. And when you're having a team like the Nets with two extremely efficient superstars, I don't think that possession game is really going to work for you. It's why it hasn't in the last 3, again, despite Kevin Durant not doing what he does, which is, not having any problem with big rangy teams if you think, oh, well, the Raptors, with Boucher and Siakam all of arms flying all over him, well, against Orlando, which starts like 4 centers, 45 points on 19 for 24 field goal shooting for Durant to carry the way there. So, I expect him to have a pretty good game, but I think the prop that's more exploitable is Kyrie only down at 24 points when he's getting 30 in his last 3, and when the Raptors have had no answers for him. And so, I think both those guys will certainly come to play here. And I'm just fading the Raps at this point, even though they have a pretty good record at home. They're 3-8 straight up when they're underdogs. Like this team is what we thought they were, and they're 1-5 against this tough Atlantic division. So, yeah, I'm on the Nets certainly at -1.
Absolutely, yeah. It's time to continue to get on the wave for them and see. Yeah, this is another good test to see if this streak is for real. I think the defense that they've shown, and again, some of these teams are playing really fast and with some pretty good offense, still limiting them, getting a bunch of unders as well in those wins. So feel pretty good about the way that they're playing and their ability to, like we said, stave off what the Raptors want to do the most. So, Nate, let's go ahead and jump into your first NBA play a prop for tonight.
Yeah, I mentioned in the game video that I like the Nets at basically no spread in Toronto with OG Anunoby out, which does mean Kevin Durant will have an easier time. But I'm going with Kyrie Irving just because his prop scoring all the way down at 23.5, while Durant's expected to get about 30 a game. And Kyrie has also been getting 30 a game in his last 3 with a 125 offensive rating. He's been much better on the road this season with a 121 offensive rating. Not that he's been bad at home. He's averaging 24.5 at home, which is still more than this prop. 26.7 though on the road, and his last 3 versus Toronto, getting 29 points per game on a 29% usage. Very nice shooting splits. And he's a plus 45. He's a big reason they've won their last 3 against the Raptors. Just pretty simple to take the points. He is filling it up with peripheral stats as well. Recently, 13 rebounds, assists per game. So you can tack that on if you want slightly better odds for 10 more peripheral stats. But, I'm looking for Kyrie and KD to both probably go over 30 here, maybe in a Nets win if you want to find some crazy doubles to get some plus odds there. But I think the safest bet before you even go to the game line is Kyrie Irving 24 points.
Yeah, Kyrie's doing his thing. Like you said, we talked about it plenty in that game video as well, and why they're playing well in their last 9 games or so is because Kyrie's back and just hooping. He's a bucket as soon as he walks on the court. We've talked about it. So when he's playing well, this prop usually is a bit higher. And the way that these two guys have been playing and accruing roughly 58% of the team's points per game, maybe a bit more like between the two of them. That's absurd, right? Because they're in their last 9, they're averaging combined like 58 points and whatever. So a little bit less than that. But either way, moving on to the next one, I'm really happy to talk about my guy Jay Randall because there's been some Jay Randall slander over the course of the last, the beginning of this season. 38.5 PRA, and he's been on a tear as of late. -120 on FanDuel for that. You can also get 2.5 threes for him at plus 106. And you're saying Julius Randle to make 3 threes. But the logic there would be the last 4 that he's played. He's attempted 10 threes a game, making 4 of them in that span. Obviously good for 40%. And the 4 there would get you over the 2.5 you need. They just played the Bulls as well in a really, really good game that went to overtime. He actually had this prop before overtime, but his numbers were incredible before that at the end of the game as well. 31, 13 boards, 7 assists, and he was diming because he was so aggressive. And I watched every second of that game. I've been watching a lot of Knicks lately because Jalen Brunson is fast becoming one of my favorite players. And Jay Randall is just vibing off of that hugely. He knows like the pick and roll that they have going is absolutely beautiful. The way that he's sealing guys and being aggressive. The only shots that Jay Randall is taking right now are wide open threes, driving to the lane, post-ups, and the little baseline jumper that he loves. Everything else is kicking off of that stuff and screen and roll for other guys to help them get open as well. I really like what I'm seeing from him, and he's had really good success against a Bulls team that has no interior presence. He's just throwing Patrick Williams around. Vooch isn't doing anything to stop that. In his last 4 versus this team, he's averaging 25 a game with 12 boards and 5 assists. That also includes a game where he went 1 for 9 with 5 points, 1 for 9 from the field with 5 in that points in that game, just a complete dud for him, and still averaging the 25 and 12 a game in his last 4 in that time. The other 3 just surging, right? So, I just love what I'm seeing from him right now on the team that has the biggest win streak in the NBA.
Threw that in at the end, yeah. I'm a little worried about Brunson repeating his 30-burger against Alex Caruso, who is a capable defender. He's probably the only person you respect on the Bulls in terms of their individual defense. I mean, Patrick Williams, he could become a nice young player, but obviously Randall's ripped through him. Yeah, those other 3 games are like 30-point flirting with triple doubles, and he's being a point forward right now. They're running everything through those 2 lefties. And I'm staying in this game. I don't know if the Knicks, it's funny that they're underdogs here when they were kind of looking like all the momentum, and then they did handle business in Chicago, but beware the old home and home, I guess, that the NBA is really fond of using this year, because I think the Bulls will be clapping back tonight in the rematch, and that means more from DeMar DeRozan, who, they've been just playing straight shootouts in their last 4 games. Pretty bad defensive rating, but they're scoring 125. He's getting 30 points per game on a 30% usage rate in those 4. In his last 4 against the Knicks, 33.5 per game. And he's just a +1, though, despite the efficiency. So that means these games have been close. That's why Julius Randle also coming along for the ride. And DeRozan tied with Damian Lillard for most clutch points per game in the league, behind, of course, the immortal Delano Banton, who played 11 minutes for Toronto this year and scored 11 points or something.
Well, look out for Delano Banton. Really got to put those filters on your searches, Nate, so you make sure you get guys that have played a decent amount of minutes to be warranted here. But C2C player props MVP, DeMar DeRozan, DDR, 26.5 points. Another really good matchup. RJ Barrett fouled out last game because DeMar DeRozan was just giving him a homeschooled class of how to play basketball within 17 feet of the basket. Just way more athletic than everybody trying to guard him. Very, very aggressive. A lot of points in the paint on top of that mid-range for him. This is another game that if there's going to be anything close to the points that were last time, they're playing at pace, both these teams, you got to like DeMar to be able to get his on a team that's scoring a lot right now, especially against these Knicks. So let's finish things off with a terrifying prop. That if you have the balls to take it, come for the ride. Anthony Davis under. And I'm including points in that. It's just a bad matchup. It's the Nuggies, and this is an opportunity where he's got a very high prop, both points and the points, rebounds, and assists. So the points are at 28.5. The points, rebounds, and assists is at 41.5. Not getting too many dimes, as he should not be. Every time he gets the ball, he should be looking to score for this team to be successful. But that's why I'm happy to throw the assists in there to get the under and add a few more to it. His last 7 regular season games versus Denver, and specifically Joker, 21.9 points per. And I say Joker, but Aaron Gordon's be guarding him. But the threat of Jokic, whose defensive rating has dropped ever since for the last 3 years every year, is also a huge part of this. 22 points a game, 21.9 in the last 7 that he's played them, 9 boards. That's all in 32 minutes a game with a 28.5% usage. So that's what he's getting right now, for the Lakers over the course of the last 10 games, where he just has some terrifying totals in there that make you wonder you've got to see who he's playing against. The only one that's super legit is against Joel Embiid, where he came in, but that was a different game as well, where it wasn't Joel Embiid guarding him, right? It was mostly Niang and PJ Tucker, which are no matchup for him. But with Aaron Gordon at 6'9", a solid defender, someone who's had some pretty good success against him, and centers in general are not doing well against the Nuggets for that reason. They're top 10 in limiting centers in all points, rebounds, and assists. Top 5 in rebounding, top 5 in limiting opponents rebounding and second chance points. So they're doing their thing on the boards. Is Denver, and I think that'll be a problem for Anthony Davis, and to get all the way up to 45 points, rebounds, and assists.
Yeah, the number's higher than you thought originally in terms of the peripherals. If we feel that strongly, do you just want to take the under on rebounds, assists, 15.5? They are kind of baiting you with some of these under. Like you said, he basically is getting no dimes at times because he's just turning and facing. So it's plus 135 on some books for under 2.5 assists. And if you think, it's likely enough that he's not going to get 2 assists, then under 15 rebounds. I mean, it takes a monster effort to do that, especially when these teams are expected to be going up and down and scoring. Like the Nuggets had a ridiculous efficiency run the last few games. There's not going to be that many rebounding opportunities if Jokic and company are just putting the ball in the basket.
Yeah, they're playing slowly, and that helps. And Nate is sort of referring to very gently the fact that I was terrified to go under 28.5 just points for AD. Nate was like, what do you think about under the points? And I was like, well, let's throw the rebounds and assists in there because I'm terrified of taking under 30 points for Anthony Davis right now, no matter how much he's been limited against the Nuggets. So you're making some sense. If you want to find some better juice on my logic here and my fear of just under on the points, then go ahead and feel good about the under on the assists and the rebounds. I mean, I'll say on FanDuel, or excuse me, on DraftKings, it's 12.5 rebounds is that prop. Under is even money. Over is even money. So they are not expecting him to get 12 rebounds quite as much, I would say, as of right now. And that's not where the action is. It's definitely on the under for his boards against a team that, like we said, has limited him in the past and limits their opponents in general. So that is all the time we have for you in this one. Make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Continue to follow along, coming at you each and every weekday this regular season. So until we see you next, happy betting.